Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. And here is Harris County Judge and an incoherent lefty losing it. Her name is Lina Hidalgo. And here she demands that no one politicises the murder of a 12-year-old Texan child allegedly tortured and murdered by illegal immigrants. And she makes this demand while blaming Donald Trump for Biden's border crisis. Astonishing.
It hurts even more that they're being used as pawns in this fight over immigration that doesn't even exist because Biden and McConnell agree. It's just that Trump won't let him move it forward.
All due respect, Judge, you said this issue shouldn't be politicized, but by pointing the finger at former President Trump and Republicans in Congress, aren't you politicizing it?
I think I answered the question. So, yeah, I mean, this is about Jocelyn. This is about her family, and if we want to,
Judge,
as I said, talk about immigration,
you didn't answer the question. Are you politicizing this by pointing the finger at Republicans and saying it's their fault, not the fault of the Biden administration that lifted the Remain in Mexico policies?
Again, the Biden administration reached an agreement with Leader McConnell to address this, but this is not about immigration. I'm not going to feed into that.
That woman who can barely string a sentence together without contradicting herself and looking like a confused simpleton is the head of the governing body that oversees Harris County with a budget of over $4 billion. Now to a mother who claims to be a victim of lefties losing it on United Airlines. She was left stranded in San Francisco with her 16-month-old because she apparently misgendered a non-binary flight attendant.
Okay, so we were denied boarding, myself, my 16-month-old son, my mother. They took our luggage on the plane, which has my thyroid medication, which I'll be very sick without, my mother's medication. They basically said tough luck. And they won't tell me exactly what I said, but what happened, and I will tell you what happened right now. I was speaking to one of the flight attendants, got their pronouns wrong. The other flight attendant didn't like it. I said, I'm really sorry. I'm not very versed with pronouns. I was holding my son. He was having a temper tantrum. I had the car seat on my back. I wasn't really focusing on anything except getting my son's car seat on the flight and getting him comfortable and safe, and him, because now it's his nap time. You can see he's kind of fallen asleep. They're saying that it's a hate crime that I did, that I might not even be able to ever fly United. We don't even know how we're going to get back today.
Now, this is exciting, folks. Only happens about once a decade, but we've got footage of Jon Stewart actually being funny. He's at his best when he challenges the dominant media orthodoxy, and that's precisely what he did here, taking on lefties losing it in the mainstream media over a disturbing image that is too violent and dehumanising to show on television.
In our editorial discussions this morning, we were asked not to show the image from this video because of its violent and disturbing nature.
Video, which we are intentionally choosing not to show you.
We're not going to show because of how disturbing it is.
I was extremely disturbed to see this.
Horrible, horrible, violent imagery.
Violent and dehumanizing imagery.
We're only going to show you a clip of this briefly.
All right, that's enough. Let's take it down.
This has got to be devastating. News channels show images from Ukraine, from Gaza, from natural disasters. They get through them dispassionately. I can't imagine how devastating this footage must be.
Former President Donald Trump shared a video, this one, on his Truth Social account featuring an image of President Joe Biden hogtied on the back of a pickup truck.
That's what was so disturbing and dehumanizing. You wouldn't show it on television, and an airbrushed Biden decal on the back of a truck? Aren't you the same networks that show reruns of 9/11 every year?
Yep, just earlier this month, much of the media in the US had an absolute meltdown about an obviously doctored image, a meme basically on the back of a pickup truck. Can't imagine why people have lost trust in the media. Even Jon Stewart has lost faith.
It's a doctored image, but it's plastered on the tailgate of the pickup truck. So if you're driving behind it, it would appear as if Joe Biden were actually restrained on the vehicle's flatbed.
If you think that's really Joe Biden tied up on the back of the pickup truck, I don't know that you have the mental acuity to be operating a motor vehicle.
Now, let's, with the help of AI, look at how CNN would love to conduct the presidential debate.
I'd like to set the ground rules to this debate. First off, Biden is allowed to speak whenever he wishes. We will have commercial breaks whenever Biden feels the urge so that his needs can be taken care of. This may or may not include naps, energy boosts, or a snack such as ice cream. On the other hand, Trump is not allowed to speak unless spoken to, and if he interrupts Joe speaking, we're automatically going to deduct 10 points from Trump and Dore. As the hall moderator of this debate, I can call it off at any moment and declare it a complete victory for Biden. Where did Trump go? He was just here.
Now, we have plenty more lefties losing at content with my next guest, Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, the ABC, which has swallowed every bit of anti-Trump disinformation, including for years pushing the thoroughly debunked Russian collusion hoax, they've shown they are slow learners. Here is 7:30 Report host Sarah Ferguson with Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was invited on the program to talk about Julian Assange's return to Australia. But then this happened.
You've never accepted the results of the 2020 presidential election. Indeed, you've lionised people for the attack on the Capitol.
Aren't we talking about Julian Assange?
Well,
Sarah, are you even a serious interviewer? I thought we're talking about Julian Assange here today.
We are.
That's what you were asking me to come on your Australian news show. I don't usually do interviews like this because people like you can't be taken seriously.
So you've lionised people imprisoned for their role in attacking the Capitol on January the 6th, including visiting them in prison. This is my question. What will Donald Trump's MAGA supporters do if he loses the election?
So what does this have to do with Julian Assange again, Sarah? I think that was the purpose of our interview. Let me tell you something that you don't quite understand. In 2020, America watched riot day in and day out with BLM riots that caused over $2 billion in our communities and cities across the country. Sarah, what the Australian people know that probably don't like your show very much, but they do understand the truth, is that in America today, we have a two-tier justice system. And the Justice Department, the DOJ, targets their political enemies. And President Trump is the very top of that. And people that protested the election on January 6th are also the target of it. And what you probably don't tell your viewers is that many of these people that are being arrested and put in jail simply walked into the Capitol building through open doors and videoed and took pictures of the inside of the Capitol, and then they walked out through doors. And that's, I'm sure, not the images that you show on your network in Australia, but
And it went on from there. And before I get your thoughts, Kosha, let's not forget that Sarah Ferguson did a 3-part series on the Russian collusion hoax, only she didn't call it a hoax. And that series was at our taxpayers' expense.
Hello and welcome to Four Corners. Tonight we begin our special 3-part investigation into the story of the century, the election of US President Donald Trump and his ties to Russia. Since his inauguration, President Trump has been caught up in a rolling series of allegations.
Did the ABC ever correct the record there, I wonder, Kosha? What did you make of that interview and the ABC's ongoing Trump derangement syndrome? $1 billion plus a year they receive to give us impartial, unbiased reporting. And it's just activist journalism each and every day.
Trump derangement syndrome is global. Clearly, it knows no borders. I think at this point it's airborne, I would say. She clearly has an agenda. I think the gotcha interview style is the currency of modern day journalism in many parts. And that's what she was clearly trying to do with MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Congresswoman. And I think maybe what she's not so used to, because it does happen in Australia, but from my observation, less so than it does back home in the US, is this adversarial interview style. And people who are fire-breathing Republicans or MAGA supporters, as they're called, like MTG, are very used to being in those adversarial environments with reporters. And she has sparred with people far more cutthroat, I would say, than Sarah Ferguson over here. And so that was something that was interesting for me to watch, where MTG was kind of giving it back to Sarah Ferguson as good as she was getting it, if not better. I will give Sarah Ferguson a little bit credit for inviting MTG on in the first place, because I do think that a lot of the Australian public and certainly ABC viewers are getting very limited exposure to the true complexity of these issues, such as the 2020 election and the Russia situation, the Russia hoax, and all of that. And so by bringing people like this on, at least she was getting a little bit of cut through the guest in providing a little bit of that perspective to the audience. And in closing, I would just say that 70% of Republicans don't trust that the 2020 election was fair. 40% of all Americans don't touch. So this is a real issue. And to the extent that that point came out of this interview, I think that was a net positive.
Well, I can tell you I was in New York 2020, and it wasn't just New York, but blue cities across the US had their shop windows boarded up, and they weren't worried about MAGA Republicans rioting. They were worried about what was going to happen if Trump actually won and the left had an absolute meltdown. But Tucker Carlson, who's here right now, there was a reporter who tried a gotcha question with him, and she was comprehensively embarrassed by the former Fox News host.
In the past, you've talked about how white Australians, Americans, Europeans are being replaced by non-white immigrants in what is often referred to as the Great Replacement theory. This is the same.
Have I said that whites are being replaced?
Well,
I don't think I said that.
Well, it's been mentioned on your show 4,000 times. And
really, when did I say that?
On your show.
I said whites are being replaced?
You have said that before.
Really?
Yeah.
I would challenge you to cite that, because I'm pretty sure I haven't said that. I said native-born Americans are being replaced, including blacks.
Native-born Americans.
Native-born Americans.
And
Americans who, like black Americans, have been African Americans, have been in the United States for, in many cases, their families over 400 years. And their concerns are every bit as real and valid and alive to me as the concerns of white people whose families have been there 400 years. So I've never said that whites are being replaced. Not one time. And you can't cite it.
Untrue.
So we just met, but when our relationship starts with a lie, it makes it tough to be friends. So
well, you've been lying
let's
about
pull that back. I'm happy to explain what I do think.
So.
Well, you actually can't say it because I didn't say it, and I don't believe it. And I'm telling you that to your face, so why don't you just accept me at face value? My concern is that the people who are born in the country are the main responsibility of its leaders. And as noted earlier, when those leaders shift their concern from the people whose responsibility it is to take care of to people around the world, to put their priorities above that of their own citizens, that's immoral. And they are being replaced in my country, people who are born in the United States. And the birth rate tells the whole story. They are not at replacement rate. And so the US population is growing because we're importing people from other countries. And my view is that happy people have children, and a functioning economy allows them to do that. And we don't have that. And so you need to fix the economy and fix the culture and make it so that people who want to have kids can. You don't just go for the quick sugar fix of importing new people. Like, that's my position. And if you think that's racist, that's your problem.
I never called you a racist.
But of course you are suggesting, and
well,
I must say one of the reasons people don't like people like you in the media is that you never say exactly what you mean. Your slurs are all by implication, and you're about to tell me the Great Replacement theory is racist or anti-Semitic, whatever. The whole point of your question was to be like, you're a scary racist.
Well, I haven't.
And my response is, no, I'm not. Okay, well, how about no more lying in your questions, and then I'll answer it.
Okay. Well, This is the same theory, or as you say, idea, that has inspired the New York Buffalo shooting, where 11 black Americans were killed. Two white Americans were killed.
Like,
it's also inspired.
It's not. First of all,
it's inspired one of the worst Australian guns
How do they
of all
get
time
people
to
this
shoot
stupid in the media? I guess it doesn't pay well. Look, I'm sorry. I've lived among people like you for too long, and I don't mean to call you stupid. Maybe you're just pretending to be, but.
Oh dear, Kosher, if you're going to show up and make outrageous claims and try to connect Tucker Carlson to mass killers, then, I don't know, perhaps go to the trouble of citing a source, have a direct quote from the man. So otherwise you're going to look like an absolute fool.
She really came across as someone who couldn't think on her feet over there. Yet again, this is another example of what we just talked about with the previous topic with the ABC and MTG, of this adversarial style that it doesn't sound like these reporters have any experience in at all. And I would layer on top of that the Socratic method, which is what Tucker was doing, which is, of course, where the professor, which in this case clearly came across to be Tucker, is asking the student, this reporter, questions that exposes the weakness in their own arguments, and she just completely fell down on that and didn't give up. I watched that whole clip till its end, and she kept throwing these pre-rehearsed, sort of canned things that she had prepared, questions that she had prepared at Tucker, and just wasn't able to think on her feet and respond to what he was actually saying. So I think she was definitely shown up on that one. Tucker is a free agent right now as well, so he's really free to hit hard, and he certainly didn't hold back there.
And she did have another go, the poor girl, the activist journalist. And this might have sounded good in her head, but it didn't work out so well.
Well, so you don't think you harbour any kind of responsibility for these hate crimes?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be charitable. I was like, maybe you're just pretending to be dumb. Now I don't think it's an act.
Tucker, thank you for taking those questions. I'm sure you enjoyed
Actually, I loved it. I just feel sorry. I mean, because I got here and the country's so unbelievably beautiful and the people are so cheerful and funny and cool and smart. I'm like, your media's got to be better than ours. It can't just be a bunch of castrated robots reading questions from the boss. And then it turns out it's exactly the same, maybe even a tiny bit dumber.
Interesting times. Kosher Gator, we always love getting your insights. Thank you so much for your time this evening.